I did it all for you, Matteo.
Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. I'm really hoping to break through the magical barrier of 1,000 subscribers. That number holds a special significance for me. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but for me, it's a huge boost of motivation to create my next video. Thank you in advance. Isadora didn't flinch as the hand reached for her. The blow was sharp, precise, just forceful enough to make the glasses on the tray tremble. She held them steady. Heat bloomed on her left cheek before the sound had even fully dissipated into the ballroom. 12 people in formal wear had just witnessed the same thing. Not one said a word. "When I need you to move," Renata Salcedo said, her voice cutting deeper than the hand. "You move. Don't make me repeat myself." Isadora lowered her eyes, then turned and walked into the service corridor. Where no one could see her, she placed the tray on the wall ledge. She placed her free hand on her cheek. She closed her eyes. It wasn't a second, it was 3. Her eyes stung, but nothing fell. She took one slow breath, like someone remembering who they were, lifted the tray, and returned to the ballroom. The red mark on her cheekbone was hidden beneath the angle of the severe bun she'd worn since 7 a.m., when she'd left her home in San Angel, without a driver, without an assistant, without any of the accoutrements the world recognized her by. A gray uniform with white piping on the collar and cuffs, an apron crossed in the back, low-heeled black shoes, a dark patent leather bag on her forearm. No one in that Lomas de Chapultepec penthouse knew who the woman Renata had just struck was. No one knew that Isadora Montiel had built from a borrowed office in Naucalpan, with a desk but no chair, and 3 employees who were paid when there was money to pay them, what was now the real estate group with the largest presence in the country's Bajío region, 4,000 direct employees, 2 national awards for sustainable construction. The previous year, she had rejected an acquisition offer for $1.2 billion because she didn't like the buyer's face. No one knew anything, because Isadora hadn't wanted them to. 3 weeks ago, her son Matteo had arrived one Sunday at noon, with that smile of someone who believes they have news so good the whole world will feel just as good hearing it. Her name is Renata. We've been together for 4 months. Her family is from the DF. I want you to meet her. Isadora listened to him for 20 minutes. She watched his hands, the way they animated as he described details, the tone of someone who had already made up their mind and just wanted others to celebrate it. When Matteo finished, she asked 2 questions: the family's surname and the father's name. What she discovered in 4 days did not reassure her. The Salcedo family had had money. Previously, the father had been a minority partner in an import firm that had failed spectacularly 8 years ago. Since then, Luciana, the mother, maintained their lifestyle with social debts and the knack for always appearing in the right places, without anyone asking how she arrived. The penthouse was rented with 11 months of arrears. Renata's car was registered to someone in Guadalajara with no known connection to the family, 2 active civil lawsuits for breach of contract, and Renata had been dating men from wealthy families for 3 years. The first ended when he started asking questions, the second when she proposed meeting his parents. Matteo was the third she had met. There could be more. She could hire someone to be an investigator, a lawyer, a couple of contacts in the right circles. She had access to all of that, but there was something no third party could do. See how Renata Salcedo treated someone who could do nothing to her. That was something only she could witness. The welcome party had been Luciana's idea, so the families could meet in an intimate setting. 40 guests, canapés, live music, champagne charged on credit. She had arrived at 7:15 through the service entrance. The catering person who was supposed to work that night had received a call informing them their shift had been reassigned with full pay. She went by Ophelia all night. Where are you watching this story from? Tell us in the comments. The main ballroom was exactly what she had expected. A chandelier too large for the ceiling, abstract paintings crammed onto the walls, all reproductions, fresh white flowers, but with an excess of arrangements, betraying someone who had seen too many magazine photos and wanted to replicate them all. Ostentatious, excessive, designed to impress rather than to inhabit. She circulated for the first hour, listening. She learned that Luciana had called a society columnist that day to cover the event, that the musician had been hired the night before because the original demanded more than the budget, that 3 guests didn't quite know who the groom was. At one point, while refilling glasses near the window, she heard Luciana speaking to a silver-haired lady. People without culture don't understand reciprocity. They're given work, a roof, an opportunity, and as soon as they can, they look for your weak spot. The silver-haired lady nodded without much conviction, like someone agreeing to avoid an argument. Luciana took her glass and walked away without looking at the person who had just filled it. Then Renata crossed the room, and the edge of Isadora's shoe barely grazed the hem of her white dress. It wasn't a blow of rage, it was worse. It was automatic. Renata struck her as one brushes away a fly, without anger, without doubt, with the same naturalness with which one presses a button. Matteo arrived at 9:15. Isadora heard him before she saw him. His voice came from the hallway, warm and animated, greeting strangers with the ease he always had. She saw him enter and look for Renata. He found her in 3 seconds. He approached with flowers in his hand, white roses, and Renata received him with an expression Isadora recognized immediately, because she had seen her practicing it in the bathroom mirror that afternoon, when she'd gone in to leave towels and found her doing it silently, adjusting the angle of her eyes, choosing between versions of herself. Matteo kissed her hand. Renata smiled. His eyes passed over Isadora twice in the next 20 minutes. Not once did they stop. By 10 o'clock, the ballroom had half emptied. As she passed the study with the door ajar, Isadora heard 2 voices. First Luciana, and the mother, when we meet her. Then Renata. He says, it's difficult. That he travels a lot, that he has his company. Perfect. Those who don't socialize are easier to manage. They get used to distance quickly. Silence. Ice in a glass. Once everything is signed, Luciana continued, the penthouse here and the one in Monterey are the first things. He won't put up resistance. It's not about signatures yet. It's about building the habit of dependence, of him not imagining his life without me before I ask him for anything. And if the mother interferes, Renata paused, short steps on the marble of someone thinking as they walk. Mothers who worked their whole lives to give their son everything always end up the same way, believing that gives them authority, believing he'll choose them. He never chooses them. A pause. The ice clinked again. That's why I make him feel that with her everything is obligation, and with me everything is freedom. Isadora turned away. She picked up the tray and continued her work. If this story is gripping you, hit like and subscribe. There are more stories like this that hit where it hurts, without needing to exaggerate anything. She returned 4 days later for a midday family meal. 10 people. This time, Patricia, Luciana's assistant, greeted her, her eyes exhausted from working for someone unpredictable. Whatever the lady says, without asking. And if she speaks to you, Renata, you nod. And if she asks me for something I don't know how to do, Patricia looked at her for the first time. You pretend you do. In the kitchen was Esperanza, a cook of 11 years, who moved her knives with the automatism of someone who no longer needed to think about what she was doing. And Consuelo, an older woman who came on Tuesdays and Thursdays from Iztapalapa, a 2-hour commute, to handle the linens. There was also Diego, a young man who washed and carried without a word. When Isadora handed him a cup of leftover coffee from breakfast, he took it with both hands and held it for a moment before drinking, as if it were infrequent for him to be offered something. Esperanza told her as she chopped onions that Luciana hadn't paid the full March fortnight, that she had said it would be compensated later, and that later had been 5 weeks coming. I don't complain because I'm afraid they'll fire me, and there's no work in my neighborhood. She said it with the tone one uses to describe the weather. Neither anger nor resignation, just the weight of something already accepted as normal, even if it isn't. Consuelo told her that Renata had character, that she didn't shout. She said it with a strange nuance, as if the absence of shouting were more unsettling than the shouting itself, that when something displeased her, she made it known in other ways, that once she found all the bedding thrown on the floor, because she had ironed in the wrong direction. I always did it this way. No one ever complained. She folded the sheet in her hands and said no more. The meal began at 2 p.m. Isadora served in silence. Matteo was there, as was Uncle Gerardo, who spoke too loudly, and 2 friends of Renata's, who asked for everything in diminutives, as if that were a form of courtesy. Halfway through the first course, Renata asked for mineral water, and Consuelo arrived with a different brand than usual. This is not the brand, Renata said without raising her voice, without looking at Consuelo. She simply pushed the glass back without touching it. Consuelo picked up the glass and headed for the kitchen. In the hallway, Isadora saw her stop in front of the wall for 2 seconds, breathe, and keep walking. There was no one else there to see it. No one else ever would. Isadora finished filling the water glasses she had pending and moved on to the next table. After dessert, she was sent to the study to deliver some documents. The room was tidy with the neatness of rooms that are rarely used. On the desk, a tray of papers. She didn't touch anything she shouldn't have, but she read what was in front of her. A credit card statement, 3 pages. The numbers in red were not small. She didn't take photos. She didn't need to. That afternoon, from her car, she called her lawyer. I need the credit reports for 2 people, and any companies or trusts linked to the surname Salcedo in the last 3 years, 48 hours. Done. The report arrived in 36. Debts with 4 institutions, the 2 civil lawsuits, the penthouse with 11 months of arrears, and something else. A notarial consultation conducted 4 months ago on the legal procedures for modifying a will when the primary beneficiary is the surviving spouse. Isadora read that paragraph twice, then put it away. Where are you watching me from? Write it in the comments. The third visit was 10 days later, an informal afternoon meeting. 10 people whom Patricia had informed through the agency's number. It wasn't a family meal, it was a business meeting that Luciana had organized to introduce Renata to 3 men, a real estate broker, someone from an investment firm, a notary. Renata treated them with a different cordiality than she used with Matteo. More direct, more intelligent, not seduction, but persuasion. At one point, Isadora passed near the group with a tray of hors d'oeuvres and heard enough. The price has already been set, the broker asked. Not yet, Renata replied calmly. But the process is going well. It's a matter of time and patience. I have both. The notary nodded. They were talking about a property, not in general but a specific one, in San Angel, her house, not the company, her house, the one she had bought with the money from the first contract she closed alone 8 months after her husband's death, when she still had to prove to the world and to herself that she could. That house was not yet linked to Matteo in any public document. But if there was a notary inquiry about modifying wills, and someone was talking about that particular office, it was because someone had been asking the right questions in the right places. Isadora placed the tray on the side table and walked out through the service corridor. The penthouse was left behind. The elevator took 40 seconds to arrive. She waited, staring at the numbers above the door without seeing them. That night, she called Aurelio, her 20-year-old assistant, the man who knew every inch of the operation and had the ability to move without making a sound when necessary. I need you to arrange a meeting at the Salcedo penthouse in a week, under the guise of a social visit, a farewell. Understood. Matteo called on a Wednesday. His voice had that urgency of someone feeling resistance where there shouldn't be any. Renata wants to organize a dinner for the families to meet. Mom, next Saturday works for me, Isadora said. Really? The surprise in his voice hurt her a little. By then, Isadora had everything. A recording obtained completely legally through a source who had agreed to collaborate voluntarily from within the house itself, the notary's disciplinary file with the Bar Association, the civil lawsuit discreetly pushed forward so it would advance before anyone could halt it. And Esperanza had called the agency to ask if she could work on Saturday because she needed the money. Adora told Aurelio to put her on the list. The Thursday before Saturday, Luciana called Matteo to confirm. It will be intimate yet elegant, so your mother feels welcome. Matteo relayed the message to Isadora via text. She replied with a single check mark. That night, she sat in her living room with unsweetened tea and Aurelio's documents on the coffee table. She read them slowly, unhurriedly, like someone reviewing a contract before signing it. When she finished, she organized them, placed them in a manila envelope, and left the envelope on her desk. Saturday arrived with clear skies and the dry chill of November. Isadora left her house at 7 p.m. This time, there was no bow, no uniform. A straight-cut navy blue suit, the one she wore for board meetings when she wanted the message to be clear before she even opened her mouth. Her hair was down, the gray streaks unapologetic. Her mother's earrings, simple gold, no stone. Aurelio was waiting for her in the car, with the manila envelope. It's all there. The penthouse was different that night. More flowers, more light, the table set for 12. Additional staff Isadora hadn't seen before. And, in the center of the living room, Renata in a black dress and Matteo in a suit, greeting the last arrivals. When Isadora entered, there was a second of stillness. Matteo turned. What happened on his face was more complicated than surprise. It was the belated recognition of something that should have been obvious before. Isadora greeted him with a kiss on the cheek. Hello, my son. No drama. Renata approached with an outstretched hand and a practiced smile. Isadora, finally. I've wanted to meet you for so long. We already know each other, Isadora said. Renata blinked. Excuse me? For 3 weeks. Pause. Ophelia, from catering. The silence was absolute. It wasn't that conversations faded gradually. They stopped simultaneously, as if someone had cut the sound with a switch. Luciana, at the other end of the table, froze with her glass in hand. Matteo looked at his mother, then at Renata, then at his mother again. What? He began. Sit down, Isadora said. It wasn't a suggestion. Aurelio entered at that moment with the manila envelope and 2 more people, Isadora's lawyer and a man whom several in the room recognized, though they couldn't quite say why. He was the kind of presence that settles into a room before one knows who he is. I didn't come tonight to introduce myself, Isadora said from the center of the room. I already know you. I came for you to know me. Renata tried to speak. Isadora, I don't know what you think you saw. What I heard. Not what I saw. She nodded toward Aurelio. The lawyer silently laid the documents across the table. Bank statements, credit reports, the notary inquiry, civil lawsuits, breached contracts, legally obtained documents, available for anyone who wished to review them. Luciana put her glass down with a thud that no one rushed to clean. This is slander. They are public records. The lawsuits are in the judicial system. The lease for this penthouse is 11 months behind. Pause. The gentleman whose name is on your daughter's vehicle lives in Guadalajara and has no discernible connection to this family. Renata took a step toward Matteo. Matteo, listen to me. No, he said, his voice low but firm. When? He asked, looking at Isadora. Isadora didn't answer immediately. She let him piece together what he already knew. The flowers on the first day, I left them in the kitchen without looking at who received them. She closed her eyes for a second. The Thursday of the lunch, the glass I took from your hand without looking at you. Yes, I didn't look at you. No, it wasn't a reproach. It was just a fact. One of the most important Matteo was going to hear in a long time. Luciana attempted one last maneuver, approaching with an expression that mixed shame and calculation. Mrs. Montiel, if there are debts, they can be settled. If something sounded wrong in any conversation, I can explain. We are adult families. We can discuss this privately. Isadora looked at her. Esperanza has been cooking in this house for 11 years, and she hasn't been paid for 3 bi-weekly periods. That's not a misunderstanding. It's a decision. Luciana didn't respond. This conversation is over. She turned to her son. We're leaving. Matteo picked up his jacket. He stopped in front of Renata for the last time. He didn't say anything to her. There was nothing to say that the documents hadn't already said. They left the penthouse together. The November chill greeted them in the hallway like something clean and real. If this seemed fair to you, leave your like. Sometimes it's the only way to say these things matter. The following week was quiet. What did happen? In silence, and with the precision of 20 years of legal experience, was this. The real estate rental lawsuit received an unexpected boost when an appraiser requested access to the penthouse for the eviction process. Luciana received the notification on a Tuesday, and a call from her lawyer an hour later, telling her that the opposing party had reinforced the file in a way that made any subsequent appeal difficult. Renata didn't call Matteo. Matteo didn't call Renata either. That had already been said. What did happen between mother and son was slower and more real. The following Sunday, Matteo arrived at the usual time, with coffee from the same bakery, and sat in the same armchair. This time, he brought no news. He brought silence and the willingness to hold it. How many times did you go? He finally asked. 3? And the hit? The first night wasn't what convinced me. I was already convinced before. But it confirmed things that papers can't confirm. Matteo rested his elbows on his knees. He had the face of someone who had just understood something that had been in front of him for a long time without him seeing it. I defended you from myself. I told him you were difficult, that you were cold, that you didn't like to socialize. I know. It's not true. No, but it's also not what hurts me the most. Pause. What hurts me the most is that when I passed by you with the tray 3 times, you didn't see me. It's not that you didn't recognize me, it's that you didn't look. Matteo didn't answer immediately, and that was better than a quick reply. You're right, he said. In the end, they had coffee in silence. Outside, the garden endured November with the stubbornness of plants that already know winter doesn't win completely. Isadora placed her cup on the table. There's a woman who worked in that house for 11 years, a cook. She's owed 3 bi-weekly payments. She's looking for work. Matteo looked at her. Aurelio has her number. If you want to do something concrete, start there. He nodded slowly, the kind of nod that isn't compliance, but understanding. The following week, Esperanza started in the corporate kitchen of the Montiel Developments building on Insurgentes. A contract with all legal benefits, a salary above the industry average. When Aurelio handed her the document to sign, Esperanza read it twice. She asked who had requested her hiring. Aurelio told her it was a recommendation from someone who knew her work. Esperanza asked no further questions. She signed. That afternoon, she called her daughter to tell her she could finally pay the overdue month for school. It wasn't a long or dramatic call, just the voice of someone who had been carrying something heavy for months and had just released a little of the weight. Not much more was heard of Renata and Luciana in the circles they had frequented. Invitations stopped arriving with the same speed that stories circulate among people who know the people who know the people who were there that night. No one needed to say anything out loud. The penthouse was vacated in December. The bow was stored in the drawer of the service room dresser in her house, in a small transparent plastic bag, next to the folded white apron. Isadora had stored them herself, with the same calm with which one stores any tool that has served its purpose and might be needed again. Maybe never, maybe yes. She would know that too when the time came.